you got to remember, I got to remind everybody, I know a lot of people are thinking, in normal D&D, just a fun game, playing a module, a short campaign, this is too much. But you got to remember, this is my epic campaign. This is my lifetime epic campaign I always dreamed about. The big one, the one I've been working on years to pull off. The Temple of Elemental Evil. And I've been working on this for a very long time, and I'm looking for the right players that are capable of stepping up to be able to roleplay something like this and really get involved, to really be engaged and run the story to its full length. D&D had a huge impact on my life. I started playing in grade school after Star Wars came out in 1977, where I started a gaming club that led to D&D. At the time, I would be found in the classroom, keeping my head low, buried in a fantasy book. The D&D Blue Box set changed and consumed my life. Quickly after that, I bought the AD&D Player's Handbook by Gary Gygax, which had a massive influence on me. I highly recommend these books to read. Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D by David Kushner and Corinne Sadmi. This graphic novel is a quick read, and it is a brief glimpse into the life of Gary Gygax, the creation of D&D, the controversy, and the effects that the game had on pop culture and many lives that it touched. The next book is Empire of Imagination, Gary Gygax and the Birth of Dungeons & Dragons by Michael Whitwer. I found that this biography is a series of fictional vignettes about events in Gary Gygax's life, loosely connected by nods at context, which is more of a inspired by true events story than an actual biography. And the last one is Of Dice and Men, the story of Dungeons & Dragons and the people who play it by David Ewalt. This was a fun read about the history of Dungeons & Dragons. The author injects that some scenes from one of his own D&D campaign, which I liked, but sometimes it strayed a little bit too far from the subject and covered a lot other role-playing games. I was really happy to identify with a lot of the scenes in this book, and not just from playing the game. You can find my affiliate links down below. It's a location for adventurers and mercenaries to get work. I have a description of the location and some flavor text, what it's like to be inside there. But what's notable about this is besides the goods and services and the fee that you could be charged, there's a cost for guild membership, which is 10 gold pieces a month. This entitles the members of all the services mentioned above, as well as access to private rooms for meetings. The guild frowns upon illegal activities. Members involved in legal disputes can seek sanctuary within the guild. They provide bail into trial. So there's a bunch of stuff like that in here. The goods and services you get is local knowledge, and a small library on culture, history, and politics only in this region, the city. A small collection of writings of the local exotic monsters, like orcs. A messenger service. That's kind of vital because it's in the Living Greyhawk. In the Living Greyhawk series that explains this, that's more like D&D 3.0. They added a sending spell that you can deliver messages from there. I suppose there could be, well, a sending spell, a messenger spell. A sending spell, I think, is a higher level spell. I know a message is a lot lower level spell, but it has limited range and use. And I think what they're referring to here by a sending spell is high level. And I would not add that to my campaign. I like to keep everything human-centric and low-level magic in my world. And I think that's stepping over the line for my campaign. So what I do is I let them have messenger services, which is they have message runners that run through the city. So wherever you're at, if you pay for the service, they'll come find you at the tavern or the inn that you're staying at, and they'll give you that message. And actually, I have a few players that were staying at some of the taverns. They're staying there, and they get a service of any kind of new jobs that pop up here at the Adventurers Guild. A message will come to them saying, hey, come down here, we got a new job for you, or this new opportunity popped up. And that is where this campaign starts. Lady Eleanor of House Osbury is looking for stout adventurers to help her out with this mission. And she posted a note. Her men posted a note here at the Adventurers Guild. Also, some very powerful personages, nobles, and other powerful people here in Verbobonc is aware of this note as well, and they have copies. And so depending on where the player is from, his background, they might get this note from maybe their master at the Mage Academy, or from the church, from their bishop at the church, or if you're just a fighter or whatever, ranger, you found the note here at the Adventurers Guild. So in this particular case, with this character, he did come here looking to do something, he came here looking for an adventuring group to join, pretty much. And he saw that note, and he thought that was interesting, so he grabbed the note, held it in his fist. He sets off across the city to Giley's Inn to see what's all about. And so that happens later on that afternoon. And so I'll role play with him going through the marketplace. Maybe he'll buy a few things. And I'll have him actually encounter a few things before this happens. I talked about plot hooks and missions and adventures that a player can do before they actually meet the rest of the players. And this is one of the Living Greyhawk modules that I incorporated into my campaign. This has a lot to do with the problems with the gnomes in the Viscounty and the Cron Hills. And this adventure itself is a great way to introduce the see with your own eyes, to experience it firsthand, of the problems that the gnomes are having with the people of Verbobonc. And that's why I like to throw this in here. I like to throw this in here to a point where it doesn't take long to roleplay. I'll usually schedule a session 0 or a pre-session with each of the players, and we'll role play it for like an hour, to the point where they actually meet the rest of the players at the start of the campaign. Like I said, this is my epic campaign, so I treat it a little bit differently. I put a lot of effort and work into it, and the kind of players I'm looking for are the kind that like this sort of thing too. And I'll also give experience points for this too, so when they start out the campaign, they already have some experience points under their belt. So this module has a lot of plots, a lot of secrets, and if any of my players read this, it's really going to ruin the campaign for them. So this is a spoiler. But there's things happening with the gnomes and the forces that work for the Temple of Elemental Evil are actually behind a lot of the stuff that's happening in the city, a lot of the problems. But I just want to show you what I put this player through. Now this particular encounter, I'll usually put 2 players together through. My next video will probably be about the wizard. The wizard's from the academy, and his master gave him the note too. So he's on his way across the city to get this quest from Lady Eleanor. But him and this ranger actually... No. But I want... So to start this side adventure off, to start this side adventure off, I'll go ahead and prompt them with it. I'll dress them with it at their locations. So right now we're just going to talk about the ranger. So the ranger is staying at Packards Inn. It's a tavern with rooms, and it's a notorious dive. It usually caters to soldiers. The tavern is a chaos of rowdy patrons with the violence from noon to night. There's female escorts and killers for hire can also be found among the clientele. It's a popular place to hire mercenaries, and often caravan owners will come here recruiting. So another thing that could have had happened to Oorod is he could have been approached to be recruited to join a mercenary band by a caravan merchant wanting guards for his trip to, I don't know, Divers or Valuna or even south. But at this point in the campaign, I decided as a DM to move things in the direction I'd like it to go. I present them with another opportunity. So before we talk about the other opportunity, let's talk about this location first. I have a description of what it looks like outside, and I have a description of inside, which is very decrepit. Also, there's eavesdropping for lore in the busy tavern. This is another way to pick up rumors and lore at a tavern. So I'll actually pass that information along to the player too whenever they're in the tavern. But I'll have to roleplay that out. So the owner, Packard himself, he has a whole background as well. He's got black hair, greasy, uncared for. He snorts whenever he laughs or feels confident. He, however, is nostalgic and wants to reunite with his old comrades. He tends to agree with himself unless someone else's opinion sounds like he can profit from it. He tries to control his temper, but he can always stop himself on what feels like must be done. He purchased this tavern just after the Battle of the Murdy Meadows. There was a devastating landslide by work of assassins' guilds and divers. He moved here to escape the wrong side of that, and been working closely with anyone that needs digression. Many secretive meetings happen here in dark corners. I added some dialogue for Packard himself, So if the player wants to strike up a conversation, asking questions from Packards, some personal questions, I'm ready for that. He talks about that he ran as a bandit when he was young. He joined up maybe 10 years ago. Small band, maybe 20 men. They raided villages and robbed caravans, but it was always about killing for them. Don't get me wrong, the very first few years, that band was the best years of my life. All the food I could eat, all the wine I could drink, and all the women I could bed. We raided one caravan one spring. I think it was a few wagons. Some were farmers going to a new village. All that was left was the women and children. Then the leader of our band, Garthik, he ordered us to kill the rest. Nah. And so he'll respond to the player, nah, we usually let them go. I refused to do it. Garthik ordered the band to kill me as well. Luckily, I made some friends with the band that sided with me. We tore each other to pieces. After that, we went our separate ways. I left his head on a spike at the wreckage of a caravan. I never knew what happened to the rest of the band. I suppose they moved on like I did. I found myself in divers, joined the guild. Then things went south after the Battle of Emerald Meadows. I jumped into the river with a bag of gold and opened up here this tavern. Doing well ever since. So I like to add, every NPC in my campaign has something to say, something to tell, something to drive home what this campaign's about, what the place is like. And I also added a bunch of comments that he would make, like, something different about you, I can tell. I hope you're not here to cause trouble. So I always add little things like that, so in case I forget, it'll prompt me, because it'll be right here in front of me. I have flavor text when you enter the tavern. He watches you behind the counter. Against the firewall is a table which sits 3 men. Copper coins are glittering in the lamplight. Spilled ale on the tabletop. The men hold cards in their hands. The man with his back against the wall wears a scorched leather cap, a greasy leathers, unshaven, scarred face, looks up and meets your eyes. He gestures to an empty chair. Have a seat, friend. Join the game. 2 other men in greasy leathers glare and scowl at everyone like prey. Their hands never far from their sheathed wicked blades. Their fingertips are arresting or caressing the well-polished pommels. Occasionally one will lean in and whisper to the other's ear while looking at another of the inn's patrons. The waitress comes over, saunters around to bring another round of tankards. The men leer and take a playful swipe at her bum. With much practice, he bounces away. You know what, you have to talk to Leona first. The oversized barbarian turns to stare at the men from over at the bar. They notice and immediately behave themselves. He's the bouncer. So I have stuff like this ready to go if the player do some role playing in this tavern. There's a lot of things going to happen in here. A lot of rumors can be conveyed in this tavern. Things that they can pick up information just by talking to people. And I gotta be ready for that. If they ever talk to Leona, she's the bar wench and concubine madame. She's the madame for the girls there. She has a little thing. I grew up an orphan in the streets of divers. So she has something to say. And some rumors. And then the bouncer, in case there's a fight, he's all statted it out, ready to go for a fight. The thieves and bandits, they're playing Tonk. And so I have some dialogue of them actually arguing while they're playing Tonk. That'll be like background chatter. The player hears this in the background as he's talking to somebody else. I can have that going on. It's hard to roleplay as a DM more than 2 characters at the same time. I saw that in a long time ago when I was running the Welcome Wentz and the B2 module Keep on the Borderlands. And just within the last 5 years, I attempted to roleplay 5 to 6 NPCs at the same time. Concurrent conversations going on all around the players, as the players roleplay too. Constantly, they're hearing this between what they're saying and what they're eavesdropping on. If a player's not paying attention to 2 people at the bar talking, I'll just say they're mumbling to each other, talking about a certain subject, and I'll leave it at that. But if the player expresses an interest, I'll send this dialogue to them, or I'll roleplay it. I'll let them hear it. And if they want to walk over there and join them, then they can. They can join the conversation and ask questions. If the player does decide to join the card game, I got more dialogue for that. Things they can find out from these guys. So this is what's important for later on in the campaign. Well, actually in this module, this adventure. Later on, you'll find out that after they leave the city, that the people behind the nobles and rich merchants that's behind the support of the Temple of Elemental Evil here in Verbobonc, they catch wind of Lady Eleanor's efforts and the mission that they send the players on. And guess where they hire the mercenaries from? Ta-da! Packards Inn, Packards Trough. And when the party does fight them, they might not necessarily recognize a few of them, or they might during the battle. Well, they'll definitely recognize a few of them after the battle. So that's going to be very interesting. And when they question those bandits after that battle, they get more information from those bandits. They find out who hired you, where are you from, why, all these questions that they're going to have. I'm going to know exactly what they're going to say. And I have that all written out too. And basically it's about that they're here, just mercenaries looking for work. It's just a job, friend. And they were hired here by some masked, hooded man that didn't show his face, didn't give his real name. So that all comes out later in the campaign. But this is the players that roleplayed this scene will know exactly where they came from very well. Also, if I need to, I got this whole dialogue here of an assassin thief that comes into the bar looking for the players. I do have this encounter planned for later on in the afternoon after the meeting with Lady Eleanor. The people behind the Temple of Elemental Evil that's helping them out here in the city sends an assassin after one of the party members to give them a message. And so if I can't corner them out in the street somewhere to give some privacy, because it only happens to one character, then I'll send an assassin, a high-level assassin, into the bar looking for him. And this is the dialogue I'll use, description I use to get him in there. And that's him right there, his personality. And then we have other bandits in here too, personalities. And just in case I need them, these are all bandit personalities here, or mercenaries looking for work. And they got their own backgrounds and adventure hooks and stuff. All right, so that's Packards Inn. So back to Oorod. Oorod is staying here. And I'm going to give him at least one, 20-minute, 30-minute role-playing opportunity to get information in this inn. Just role-play the inn, him staying here. And we know the prices on the right is how much it costs per night. And he only has so much coin left. And he rolls up his character, and he rolls up the coins of how much he has and buys his equipment. Then he'll know how much coin he has left, how much money he has left in this campaign. And he has to spend it here. So I got prices for drinks and meals and rooms. And he's going to have to he might be running out of money, so he might be getting a little bit desperate. But this is where he's staying. Also, I have maps of the downstairs and upstairs and the basement too, in case I need it for some fight, like a barroom brawl or something like that. Maybe the players get really, real belligerent towards those people playing cards. Maybe one of them is a thief and he wants to steal from them or cheat at cards and it ends up in a fight. So I gotta be as a DM be prepared for anything like that happens. So to get him to go to that side quest first, he learns from one of the patrons here that 2 rangers were brought in to the city that were attacked by gnomes. They were attacked by orcs and gnomes, which is really odd. And it's a rumor going around town that this happened, and they were brought to St Cuthbert for treatment. So the reason he's even here, he's trying to get help, to help his home and to find out what's going on. And he wants to get involved. He wants to investigate what's been happening. And this sounds like a good opportunity. So he's going to decide to go over to the St. Cuthbert and maybe question these 2 soldiers being treated. The wizard in the group also, that happens to be, living at the academy, his master is going to ask him the same thing. Because his master has heard that is being treated under the Viscounty orders, that those 2 mounted borderers are being treated by St. Cuthbert. And he's going to send his wizard over there, the player wizard, to investigate this as well and report back to his master what's happening. Because all the powerful people in Verbobonc, they're always looking to elevate their station to be more prominent in the community, in the Viscount's eyes, in court. Because right now, the Church of St. Cuthbert is the most influential church in the entire city. They're the official church of the Viscounty. And all the other churches, they're trying to get that position. They're trying to get more followers and things. And there's also 2 academies of magic here in the city. And this is a fairly new academy that this player is at, called the Wrinkle Academy. It's taught by the Master Gnome himself, Obel something. He wants to look good in the eyes of the court and Viscounty too, of the Viscount. And so he sends his player to investigate this as well. So maybe they can lend their aid and help the Viscounty out. And this is always a good political thing to do, to be seeming very helpful and to be, and even the Thieves Guild does that. They know that the authorities at B, they let them thrive and operate in the city because they get more worth out of the Thieves Guild for letting them exist than without them existing. They get a lot of information that couldn't be had in any other way except for the Thieves Guild. So everybody has a vested interest in pleasing the Viscount and the court. And so no matter who the player is or what their background is, that's a good reason for one of them to be looking into this thing that happened. To be looking into this event that's happening right now in the city at St. Cuthbert. He'll go there, and I'll go to that location in the city. And I'll show that in the map, too, of my Verbobonc city, where that's located at. The Temple of St. Cuthbert in Verbobonc, the seat of the Archbishop Huffren, is a solid, imposing building. Its domes are graceful in the morning sun that cap the thick, militant, white-washed walls. The building proudly stands over the streets as a beacon of good and righteousness. The very thick oak doors, carved in relief to show St. Cuthbert himself, with a hand extended in supplication and the other raising the cudgel to smite the unfaithful. So it's a very imposing sight when the player first arrives at the scene. Overhead, carved into the stone mantle, are divine words. Chaos and evil prevail where good folk do nothing. Each side of the building boasts large, high-arched windows, and are placed so the sun shines into most of the rooms throughout the day. With the popularity has been declared the official patron of the city, the clergy has outgrown its walls. You've heard that a construction has begun near the Traders' Market of a much larger cathedral. See, this is feeding the players political information, background for the campaign. And all this is important going down the road because of what's happening in the Viscounty. And this is little nuggets I throw in here to snowball them. You can't give them all this information at once, so I just give them nuggets at a time. The visitor's entrance. So they go to the entrance, right? Then through the great doors into a large hall. I have full description of what it looks like inside that place with sayings on the walls and the statue and all that stuff. But we'll skip all that. When he approaches the door, he's greeted by a disciple. To the right, a young billet is collecting donations at a door that leads to tables of food and drink where other cudgelers discuss matters of faith and providing no-nonsense, straightforward advice to commoners grazing the offered food. For the church, we'll go towards building the new temple. Standing to the left is a young billet in brown robes with a stout cudgel strapped to a belt. He nods at your entrance and speaks. Welcome to the Church of St. Cuthbert. I'm Billet Joris. What brings you to the bastion of humanity and the seal of the stalwart host? You see those words I used? That's all in the lore of Greyhawk. It's really hard to convey that kind of information to players. And it's really hard to memorize that and convey it to them while you're role-playing. That's why I write it out. And so the players will pick up on this. This world's a lot larger than you would have guessed. It's more immersive because it hinted at things. This whole thing hinted at how powerful this church is in the Viscounty and what the Viscount thinks of them and the people thinks about them and what's this thing about the stalwart host and things like that. So it's interesting. The player role plays and the billet finally turns away to go fetch the Archbishop himself. So you wait some time. A stream of cudgelers and worshippers alike join the worshiping altar. They chant along with the priest at the altar. This is when I usually play music. Waiting for a sermon to begin. Then a short, heavyweight man in his mid-60s with heavy jowls and puffy cheeks bellied, the hard and yielding gaze of tiny eyes. His appearance makes him seem profligate and debauched, but he is far from it. He's dressed in plain clothing. His hair is cut to the style of a tonsure, giving him an appearance of a simple monk. I am Archbishop Halfren. What brings you here to me? So he introduces himself. The player role plays, tells him what he wants. And I will not let the Archbishop will not allow him to see the two mounted borderers. The mounted borderers is an organization under the direct control of the Viscount Wilfric himself, and they protect the borders of the Viscounty. They patrol the borders and pursue any kind of activities like rage or banditry out there. And so two of their members are here being treated. So if If the bishop is satisfied with the player's explanation why they're here and why they should be allowed to question the two mounted borderers, then he'll allow it. But if the player doesn't have a good reason for it, then it'll be turned away. So go away. It's none of your business. So let's say they do manage to pull it off. And usually at that time, I'll have the wizard and the other player, like this ranger, there at the same time. They came together. Or maybe they came in one after another. And so I'm going to have them both roleplay the scene. Hoffren will talk to the characters can talk to them about the trouble. So then Hoffren turns right to the nave and leads you to the side room. And he'll more comments to flush this campaign out. Give him some nuggets. Our infirmary is this way, near the classrooms. We take care of the sick here, teaching them the wisdom of our God at the same time. It works out best for them. St. Cuthbert rewards those who give freely to the needy. See, it's a little bit about St. Cuthbert again. Leading to a small room, Hoffren looks at a man and a woman lying on pallets by the window. The man looks like he was beaten, and the woman has 3 visible scars from sword cuts. So at that moment, before the bishop excuses himself, he'll say, "By order of the Viscount, these are the soldiers brought to me for healing and investigation. By St. Cuthbert, we will get to the bottom of this. Our worth will be measured by St. Cuthbert in the amount of bloodshed, both ours and theirs. Keep your questions short. These faithful defenders need their rest." No, I usually roleplay that a little better. So anyway, what you see, descriptions. I got 2 of them. I got their stats, level 6 and level 4, Ranger, level 6 Fighter. I got a description. Laying on one of the cots is an older, seasoned human soldier, what have been heard described as a mounted borderer. His face and arms are weathered and dark from years of patrolling the Viscounty. His chain and leathers have been stripped from him and laid on a shelf on the table. Verbobonc issued armor. Tabards showed the heraldry of Verbobonc, device of mounted borderers of an unknown rank. He scowls with every slight movement. He'll introduce himself as Colin, patrol leader of the mounted borderers. I am in no mood to talk. My rib and spleen. On which authority do you have to ask a representative of Verbobonc questions? And then the female is a young human woman of erect bearing, displaying elven features, dressed in breeches tunic and boiled leather vest, with a long sword leaning against the table. Hanging around her graceful neck is an amulet of silver oak pear leaves over an acorn. That's a amulet of the Gnarley Forest. So it's a ranger. So she's obviously a member of the Gnarly Rangers. And Oorod will recognize that immediately. He'll know that she's a ranger. So immediately he's going to just launch into this conversation with her to relate. They have something in common. And he's going to be asking her a lot of questions. She'll say, Marissa, Gnarly Ranger. As you can see, Master Wizard, we are busy at the moment being tended by the good priest of St. Cuthbert. We have told Archbishop Hoffren all we know. By a long-standing arrangement of the Gnarly Rangers, support is provided at the request of the Viscount. I have been riding on patrol with Colin going on 12 seasons now. More nuggets of information about who the bishop is, the Viscount, and the mounted borderers. So during questioning, at that point, I'll let the players roleplay, ask a ton of questions, and I got a whole bunch of answers here below. But during those answers, I'm waiting, and a young man in robes of St. Cuthbert will wander by. He listens to the characters discussing with the writers for a little bit. He'll mutter to himself and then goes into the front he leaves. He goes to the front of the temple, but they don't know that. They could spy on him, look out the door, and see where he's going. It's really funny. I ran this twice now, and nobody paid any attention to this at all. So anyway, we got answers here. So we got some typical answers. We got some answers they can actually give the players if they roleplay well enough. Our group was on patrol a few weeks ago, and we ran across the remains of a gnome caravan coming to Verbobonc from the Cron Hills. By the schedule, it would have been the one from Tolvar, which is the capital of the Gnomes, Free Assembly of Gnomes in the Cron Hills in Greenway Valley. So many things you got to remember in this campaign. I said it so much, I have it memorized now. It looked like the whole caravan, all 6 wagons, had been destroyed by ogres or giants. Dead horses littered the area, but not a gnome to be found anywhere. Plus, when we looked closely, it appeared that the wagons had been have not been carrying anything at all. There's no remains of cargo. The rumor around town is that the goods were sold by the Tolvar gnomes to a merchant in Divers. That they staged the accident to explain why they could not deliver the merchant here in Verbobonc. You know, a lot of politics going on here. Another thing they'll learn is the merchant expecting that load was Vulin. Vulin is a pretty rich and has a store in the center of the city. He sells gems and employs jewelers to set stones for customers. It's a jewelry store. It was his shipment. So they can go there and question him. Another one is just the other day. So now he's going to talk about something. This is what I said. What I said about the caravan happened a couple of weeks ago, but they didn't get hurt or nothing. So the reason they got hurt is the thing they're going to say right now. Just the other day, we were patrolling in the foothills when we were set upon by gnomes. They shouted that we were not welcome in the hills, and they attacked us. We retreated. We retreated rather than fight back. We were still injured. The gnomes had a hill giant with them, one that was wearing a gem-encrusted necklace. I wonder where he got it. At that time, I like to add a lot of role-playing layers here. In the other room, the sermon begins. The path of the Tipex is beset on all sides by iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, supports the weak, or is truly the servant of St Cuthbert. On this day, our holy day of St Cuthbert, his words of wisdom. I did that better in the game. But anyway, that's going on in the background. But I don't want to interrupt their role-playing too much. I just mentioned this. That's happening in the background. I got music playing. There's a priest there, and he's tending their wounds, but he's minding his own business. So he can butt in with some advice or rumor, or they can ask him some direct questions, and this is things that he knows. The gnomes in the city have been friendly as always, until the last 2 weeks. At that time, they started acting distantly and as if they suspected humans of wanting to hurt them. Another thing is the humans in the city also became cold and distant towards the gnomes. Some feel they have voiced publicly and would like to withdraw patrols from the hills. That comment is the mounted borderers have traditionally always patrolled the hills to help protect the gnomes. Well, the Viscount ordered them back. They pulled the patrols back. They are no longer patrolling along the hills of the Crown. So that's huge. And I know the Rangers would love to know about that. Well, they do now. They obviously they do, but they'd like to know more about that. Another thing he knows, the gnome trouble has been brewing for weeks. The gnomes in the city have been less and less friendly as the weeks have passed. Now they are almost hostile towards humans. The elves seem to be neutral, but the gnomes are really getting unfriendly. What we don't understand is that if they like us so little, why don't they just leave town? The priest would be confused about that. Some others have suggested that maybe they remove all the gnomes from the city. There's stories and rumors that suggest that the gnomes have started dealing with divers and been cheating the merchants of Verbobonc. Make up things that make sense. The wilder, the better. I'm not going to say all this to the players. It's just a list, and I refer to this list often, no matter who they're talking to in the city. There are more stories about patrols being ambushed, most of which are probably false, but there's no evidence of a gnome military buildup. The Archbishop could tell them, if they question him, the church have been trying to steer a middle path, as if that is the path of common sense. But there are those who think that retribution against the cheating gnomes is the proper business of St. Cuthbert's faithful. That's a loaded statement there. Then, if you really want to give them some serious information, if they question them very well, the bishop would know this. The bishop could finally tell them this if they did a good job questioning him. They'll say, he would admit that Prince Jim, who is the prince of the gnomes, by the way, and Lord Hilloway, which is the representative of the Greenway Valley, which is of the gnomes. The gnomes in the council chambers have made outrageous claims that the lords of Verbobonc want to annex their hills and their people. They also claim that the lords are set to steal their minds. Baseless claims, I assure you. That's what he would say, the bishop would say. So the gnomes are scared that the lords are out to take their silver and gem mines. Which might be some of the truth, depending on which lord we're talking about. So that's all part of that Game of Thrones politics I was talking about earlier in another video. So if the characters want to get in on more of the gnome position, assuming the gnomes will talk to them, they can go to Gnomesburg in the Gnomes Quarter over there and talk to them some more and get more of this information. But let's continue from there. So the player's done talking. This little side adventure they're on before they meet the big group. As they leave, something happens. So they're escorted out. They leave the church. But you come outside and you see that a young priest of St. Cuthbert speaking to the crowd that's gathered around in front of the temple. It is one of the priests that you remember seeing while you were inside, but you cannot place him immediately because the crowd draws your attention. The crowd seems agitated and enthralled by the speaker. And you know that the gnomes have become odious in Verbobonc. Even they now realize it, and they are starting to withdraw from the rest of the citizens. Their duplicity in trade and their unfriendliness are bad enough, but there is a patrol leader in this very temple that was attacked, and his whole unit, by a band of gnomes who hired a hill giant. They certainly don't want to be seen want us in their hills, and retribution is called for. If they don't want us out there, they can leave the city to us. The crowd roars at this point and shouts, "Gnomes, go home! Get the gnomes out of our city!" The echoes are ringing off the nearby buildings. The crowd is made up entirely of humans. In the name of St. Cuthbert, let us rid our city of these traitorous gnomes! He shouts, raising his cudgel high in the air above his head. So at that point, the players usually try to do something about it. But just as the players move to do something or say something, he'll leap. He'll leap into the crowd, running with the mob down the streets in this mad riot of looking for gnomes. Looking for the traitorous gnomes that they know they're in the city that need to leave. And they're hunting them down. And they got clubs and all sorts of instruments to beat them with. And he's lost in the throng. And they're all scattered in all directions. So the players lose sight of him. Just as the players just think about what they could do next, they start thinking maybe they can find him. Suddenly they're interrupted again. The Archbishop Hoffren storms out of the church, red-faced with angry strides out of the church, and proceeds to berate the priest. But the priest disappeared into the crowd as they cheer and then break up to throw gnomes out of the city. Most of the crowd heads towards past the Cathedral of Slytherin and onto Bridgewalk Road. Fuming, the Archbishop marches with purpose into the church yelling, "Javis, my office now!" And they end the scene. Now the players got to describe what they're going to do. They got to tell me. They got to choose what to do next. So they're welcome to go investigate Valen, who's in the middle of the city with his jewelry store. They can go to Gnomesburg and question some gnomes there. Or they could join the crowd and start beating gnomes with sticks and drive them out of the city. Whatever trouble they want to get themselves into. Hopefully my players don't do that. So I'm ready for that. You know, if they ask any questions from humans, I have some rumors I can give them. The gnomes are trouble. I think we should return back to the Cron Hills that they belong. Some of those buggers look light fingers, and not one of them appreciates the sacrifices that we made for them. You know, they're going to say things like that when they ask any human about the situation. But if you ask any gnomes that they find, like if they go down to Gnomesburg or something, they've got all sorts of things that they're going to say. Humans have been treating us badly for weeks. We work hard to make this town great, like they do, but they still treat us like we don't belong here. They don't protect our caravans from the mountains, and they complain when goods don't arrive. You just can't please them, and many of us wonder why we try. We were granted new trade concessions in return for military aid. If it wasn't for the Gnome Brigades, you humans would never have won the Battle of Emerald Meadows. This is true. They did partake in that fight. They were instrumental. Prince Jim is on the Viscounty Council of Lords. and we have to say how things are to run now. You humans, source of our recent economic decline. Only Prince Jim's reasoning prevailed in answering Lord Mayor Hax's rash words, and policies within almost led our war between the Viscounty and the Gnomes. Another one is, your lords want to annex our hills and our people. We want nothing to do with human rule. Or, your lordship will steal our minds and call it lawful. So they have things to say. And also there's a couple of things they would say that would come from either. The events of this. There's a song. There's another encounter I added to this whole campaign to be given to any one of the players, or maybe after they all get together. There's a bard who was hired by the bad guys to sow dissent in the cities. They're pulling all these tricks to get the people to hate the gnomes and get the gnomes to leave the city and cause dissent between the two factions. And they hired a bard, a bad bard, to sing this horrible, scandalous song about Prince Jim, and it's really, very insulting, and it causes almost a riot in one of the taverns. And so I have some dialogue what that song is about, if they ask somebody about it. The events of the song took place weeks ago. It was a minor debate among the relations of Luna. No one knows what really happened. The bard heard it third hand and added his own twist to suit his wish to insult gnomes. And the gnomes heard from Prince Jim's senior staff people. So it was a song from a couple of weeks ago, and this bard actually twisted the word to make it even worse. If they wander the streets, they pick up more rumors. So I'm ready with all these rumors. That's the whole thing about this article. I'm just ready with rumors. If I see a spot where I can convey it to the players, I'll just give it to them. So the players are on the way after this to Jolly's Inn, most likely. They want to get on with the campaign. And whether or not they decide to investigate the jewelry shop, they're going to have to pass it anyway, because it's on the main thoroughfare. So as they walk, they hear angry voices, gnomes yelling in the streets. They hear angry voices coming their way of gnomes coming down the street around the corner. It's a separate gnome plot, the other Living Greyhawk module I'm adding to this campaign. And they hear them, and they come storming around the corners, 3 of them. So the players can stop them and question them, or just let them on by. But they're definitely going to hear some things. They're going to hear what they're yelling about. They're going to hear some complaining. And they're also going to hear some more shouting from another gnome and a human further down the street around the corner where they just came from. So obviously there's a crowd being drawn, and there's a big argument going on. They're going to say things like, we are the prestigious Jalink family from Tuvar. Bliss, our cousin, head of the family, is still arguing with that human. We dealt in good faith. Coloron claimed he never received our goods. They're outraged, and they're complaining, and they're almost to tears, actually. They're very distraught. The Longsangs have been treating us badly for weeks. We worked hard to make this town great, just like they do. And they still treat us like we don't belong here. They don't protect our caravans from the mountains, and they complain when goods don't arrive. So we heard that one before. And the next thing they will say is, he, our brother, our cousin, he is around the corner right now at his shop, selling a brand new set of silver implements, including some that are clearly our work. And his brother will comment next to him, you can tell our work anywhere, nodding his head. Then he continues, he claims that he was approached by a gnome from our family and bought the pieces from him. Well, we had delivered, and we have a signed receipt for goods, but he won't pay. So this is the thing that's going on. So if they question them further who they are, they'll say, we are the 3 brothers of the Jalink family. Our cousin is Bliss Jalink, head of the family, and still arguing with a human. They'll admit that they mine silver and process it and sell to the merchants and for Verbobonc divers. In exchange, we buy clothes and whatever else we want. We also do metalwork and sell finished pieces. We dealt in good faith, selling minerals from our mines to a merchant named Coloron. He claimed to never have received our goods, from us that is. He is around the corner selling a brand new set. You've heard that already. We are disgusted and want nothing more to do with this town. Our family is returning to the hills, and we will deal with honest merchants and divers in Keelland instead. That means all the gnomes from the Crown Hills are thinking about actually sending all their work and or trade to Divers Archeland and just boycotting Verbobonc completely. Exactly what the Temple of Elemental Evil agents want, right? So stepping into the street, you see a small crowd standing around the door of a silver shop named Carolan's. Shouting comes from inside, and you can clearly make it out as you approach. You hear a gnome, "Eistead, pay us what you owe! I have the paper with your signature on it, right here!" And you hear, and then you'll hear a human shout back, "I already paid your representative. I paid in cash on delivery. Here's my signed receipt for the gold." "We never received our gold, so that receipt is worthless." So they're going to argue. And the players, if they're welcome to, they can get involved or not. Actually, my last two groups didn't. They just kept going. But you know what? At least those nuggets were cemented in, they understood it. They got it. It conveyed the information I needed to the players for this campaign to bear fruit later. Because this is really what's going on in the campaign. All these bad things that are happening. And the players talk about it a lot, actually. About the two characters that are witnessing this, they're welcome to roleplay. This gives the opportunity for these two players to roleplay this information to the other players after they meet. So it gives them a lot of opportunities to roleplay together. I don't like it when a DM actually tells the entire party what one person hears or sees, because that eliminates the middleman. It eliminates any need for roleplaying at all. For the player to tell the rest of the players in his own words, in his own perception, his own view of what he experienced, or what he's seen, or what he determined. And that leads to a very stale, flat campaign. It's just not as engaging. So I prefer to give information to players all I can with notes or beforehand, so that way it gives them opportunity to roleplay more. And the rest of my article talks about what really is going on, what's behind all this. And if you do quest in Carolan, he does have a bunch of answers. If you quest in Bliss, he has a bunch of answers. And I'm ready for that. And then, of course, there's more shops that you can go. So the next encounter, later on, if I want to, it depends if the campaign's dragging or not. But the gnomes actually try to burn down a warehouse. They're trying to climb into this warehouse that night. This is later that night. This is after the party gets together and they meet. I have an encounter ready to go if I feel like I want it. And add a little action before the party leaves town. They can actually hear about it. They'll hear these dozen gnomes trying to break into a warehouse by the waterfront. And if they put a stop to it, good things can happen. They can actually make friends, support from the gnome community if they handle this right. Or they could get blamed for helping the gnomes and be arrested. So, and what's really awful is during this event, if the player's activities actually inadvertently had one of the gnomes drop his lantern in through the window in the warehouse, well, at the base of the window, there's a whole bunch of explosives. So they'll send that whole warehouse up in flames to a huge explosion that can be seen and felt and heard throughout the entire city. And actually, my last party did do that. They were very upset. They were very embarrassed. They didn't want to talk about it. But that was an utter failure on their part. But the gnomes did get away. Actually, two of the gnomes died. Two gnomes that were still in there, they died. But the rest ran away and got away. And the players did not report this to the watch. That kind of running from the streets in all directions. The watch was running to investigate, to see what happened, to put the fire out. But the players, vamoose, they left quickly. They didn't want to be involved at all, which is really funny. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up with the player getting there. After all this... After players experienced all this, the two players, the wizard and the ranger, and the ranger could have just been an elf ranger for the Gnarly too, or a human. I just had them do the same thing every time. If those two characters finally get all this behind them, they witness all this. They learn a bunch. This gives them opportunity to learn so much about Verbobonc, the city, and the Viscounty, and the politics of the churches and things like that. So once this is all behind them, I get them to Jolly's Inn. So what do you think about this character, and what do you think about the City of Verbobonc? Please comment below. I'd like to hear what you have to think, and also click subscribe and like. And if you want to support me even further, you're welcome to go to my Patreon and encouraged me to make more stuff like this. And I provide these articles on my Patreon to all my members so they can use it in their own campaign. A lot of this is very useful material, and you don't have to use it as I've done it, but you can piece it out and just add a little bit into your campaign that you think is a good idea.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Thank you for stopping in to see my 3 orcs. Enjoy your Temple of Elemental Evil campaign.